Murder 10-year-old Breasia Terrell, leaving her body where she was dumped and found almost a year later. Well, anyhow, on the stand right now is the criminalist who did the DNA analysis on Bree's bones and also on some of the clothes found on her, and he has just made that identification for the judge. He has just told the judge that the body found partially in a pond submerged was the 10-year-old that everyone had been looking for. Let's go back into court and listen to what else he has to say to this judge.
How many reports in total did you author?
3 for this case, 2 others on a cross-referenced case.
Okay, and we'll set the discussion aside for the cross-reference case a little bit later on. We've had discussions about that. But as far as your second report, Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 58. I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 58 for purposes of identification. Do you recognize State's Exhibit number 58?
Yes.
How do you recognize State's Exhibit 58?
This was a DNA report that I issued on April 19th of 2021.
And in this report, what is it that you will be speaking to?
This was the shirt, shorts, and bra submitted by Mark Bethel from the medical examiner's office.
All right. Your Honor, this. Well, let me ask you this. What report number is this?
5.
Does it bear the same lab case number?
Yes.
What date did you generate this report?
April 19th of 2021.
And again, does it identify the nature of the report that you authored?
Yes, it's a DNA report.
And does your signature appear at the back of the document as the criminalist who did this analysis and generated this report?
Yes.
Your Honor, the State would move to introduce State's Exhibit 58.
No objection. Exhibit 58 will be admitted.
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
All right. So as we look at State's Exhibit 58, then, are we simply focusing on the 3 items of evidence for that first submission that we saw in the earlier report?
Yes.
Okay? And for purposes of our written record, just establish that again.
This was a shirt, shorts, and bra submitted by Mark Bethel from the medical examiner's office on March 25th, 2021.
Okay. Now describe the type of DNA analysis that you were doing on these articles of clothing.
These articles of clothing, I was screening for evidence of sperm or seminal fluid, basically sex abuse type evidence.
Okay. Mr. Schmidt, can you speak to the impact of environmental factors if, in fact, there was sperm or seminal fluid on an article of clothing that had been located outdoors over the course of multiple seasons?
The chances of me being able to develop a DNA profile from that type of item, if it's left outside in Iowa weather for multiple seasons, are pretty slim for me developing any kind of DNA profile from it. The reason I was able to identify or develop a profile from the bone for this case is because the DNA is basically a lot more stable in bones in bodies. The DNA is trapped in the crystallized calcium structure of the bone, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy to release the DNA out of those crystallized, hardened, calcified bone cells.
All right. Can you also speak to the topic of bleach? How would bleach impact the ability to detect sperm or seminal fluid on an article of clothing if it was poured over that clothing?
Bleach, it destroys DNA. We use a solution, 10% bleach in our lab to clean our work areas. And that's just a 10% diluted bleach solution, but that's good enough to clean our working surfaces to clean the surfaces of any DNA. That way we're not contaminating items in between examinations.
Okay, all right. So walk us through your findings in this particular case.
I attempted testing on 2 stained areas of the shirt. Both screening tests were negative for seminal fluid in those areas, and I did not find any sperm microscopically in either of those samples. I attempted DNA analysis on the sperm and epithelial fractions for both cuttings. I was unable to develop any DNA results from the shirt.
I want to stop you right there. Now, you have mentioned two terms. You talk about the sperm fraction. It's obvious, but define.
When we look at a sample that contains seminal fluid or possibly contains seminal fluid, we attempt to separate out two different fractions from that sample. In the end result, we're going to have, or attempt to have, one tube that has DNA from skin cells or blood or saliva, and then in another tube, we're going to have just the sperm cells or DNA from sperm cells that are there. Our lab calls those the sperm fraction and the epithelial fraction. Other forensic labs call those the forensic 1 fraction, or F1, and the forensic 2 fraction, or F2. It's just a naming thing. Just because I call it a sperm fraction doesn't mean it contains sperm there, and that's probably why the other labs call it an F1 fraction, because it doesn't always contain sperm.
Okay, and so then that explains the difference between sperm fraction and the epithelial fraction.
Yes.
All right. Now, let's also speak to this term, spermatozoa. Tell us what you mean by spermatozoa.
Spermatozoa is just a plural for sperm cells. If there's just one sperm cell, then we'll call that a spermatozoon. If there's two or more, then we will say spermatozoa.
Okay, then let's go back and let's circle the wagons and start where we were at before I had you give us those definitions of a sperm fraction versus an epithelial fraction.
Okay. I was unable to develop any DNA profiles from either the sperm or epithelial fractions of both samples from the shirt. I also tested a stained area of the crotch liner of the shorts and a stained area from the seat area on the interior liner of the shorts. Again, for those two samples, both of those samples screened negative for the presence of seminal fluid. I did not find any sperm in either of those samples, and I was unable to develop DNA profiles from the sperm or epithelial fractions of both samples.
Okay, I want to make sure that we understand what you're saying. All right, when you say that you were unable to identify any sperm as being present, again, if clothing is outdoors and is subjected to the elements, will that destroy the sperm?
It can.
All right. So then when you say that you were unable to identify sperm, do we have to consider the environment within which those articles of clothing were located and what they had been subjected or exposed to?
Yes.
Okay. Continue.
I also examined a bra that was found in two pieces. I attempted DNA analysis on the interior cups of the bra. I also screened the cuttings that I took from the cups of the bra. Both of those screened negative for seminal fluid, and no sperm were found in either sample. And then again, I was unable to develop any DNA profiles from the sperm or epithelial fractions of both of the cup samples.
Okay. Are these findings consistent with what you would expect to find if you had articles of clothing laying outdoors through a summer, fall, winter, and spring month?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about your third report that you generated. Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel what's been marked as State's Exhibit 59. I'm handing you State's Exhibit 59. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 59?
Yes.
How do you recognize State's Exhibit 59?
This was the DNA report that I issued on July 29th of 2021.
Okay. And again, does this contain the same lab case number that you previously referenced?
Yes, 2020-16859.
What report number is this?
7.
What date did you generate the report?
July 29th of 2021.
What type of report is this?
This is a DNA report.
And does your name appear on this document as the author?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibit number 59.
No objection.
Exhibit 59 will be admitted.
Your Honor, again, may I publish?
You may.
What was the nature of the submission as noted in State's Exhibit 59?
This was an additional submission from Mark Bethel with the State Medical Examiner's Office. On June 30th, 2021, Mark submitted fingernails, or apparent fingernails.
Okay. Now, what type of fingernails did you say that he submitted to? Did you say parent fingernails? I'm not sure that I understood you correctly.
Yes, I couldn't determine if they were real fingernails or the fake fingernails.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. What was the nature of the request then that was made for the fingernails that had come from the State Medical Examiner's Office?
Just if I could develop any DNA profiles from the fingernails.
Okay, and then describe what you were able to determine or not.
I was unable to develop a DNA profile from the swabs of the fingernails.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and take that report from you.
Okay.
I'd like to set the stage for our further discussion. Now, were you asked to do DNA analysis on some items of evidence which would have included like a child's white medium tank top as a result of a murder that DCI agent Rick Ron was involved with? It was a well, I shouldn't say collateral, a completely separate investigation from the investigation of Breasia Terrell.
Yes, there was a separate homicide from Clinton County that the DCI was investigating.
So everyone's looking for motive for a convicted sex offender to kidnap and kill a child, but unfortunately, no testing on DNA revealed any type of sperm, any type of evidence that would indicate a sex assault. Even if there had been one, she was in the elements for so long, it would have been washed away. And that's what we're listening to right now from the DNA analyst. So we're going to take a quick break when we will go back into that courtroom on the other side.